Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. Today, our podcast is going international. I'm so excited to have Grace Yang to join us from Singapore. She has an amazing journey starting from economics and finance, both undergrad and master's. And now she's found herself in this amazing career called solutions engineering. So, Grace, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick? And then I've got some really interesting questions for you, Grace.
Thanks, Sachin. I'm really excited to be here. Excited to bring this podcast international. But yeah, as you said, my background in undergrad and master's was in finance and economics. And then I found a role in London after that master's. I was actually doing consulting, but I wasn't really happy there. And that's kind of how I landed in solution engineering, is going from consulting, realizing I liked helping people solve problems and translating that into really what I see as the vendor side advising.
Don't you wish in your undergrad or master's there was like a minor in sales engineering or solutions engineering that you could have found your calling before and said, you know what, I don't need to do this consulting gig. I can just jump straight to sales engineering. But what about that consulting? Was it when you were doing consulting, you saw some other solutions engineers at that company? Or what was your first exposure to customer facing sales engineering in action?
Yeah, great question. I actually didn't even know sales engineering existed when I was going through school. So like you said, a class or even just a career fair or something on that would have been really great. But I was lucky enough that I was working on a data architecture project, and my clients were a vendor salesperson and a solution engineer, and I was brought in to help with some of the ops consulting. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully did a good job. And when they moved on, they thought I'd be a great fit, and introduced me to this world that I'm in now.
Perfect. Did they already have an SC team? They had a position open for SC and they said, you know, you would be great. Have you considered it?
Yeah, they were looking for someone to join the SE team, and I was looking to move on. And it happened that in their new role, they had headcount, and here I am.
Perfect time, perfect place. As you were applying for that opportunity, Grace, were there any hesitations? Because I'm assuming you hadn't worked as part of sales ever before. And there's perceptions people walk into about what is it like to be part of the sales organization. What were your biggest concerns about risks about joining this?
Yeah, so it was a big sort of pace change for me, moving directly into something customer facing. The good thing in consulting is that you're exposed to a lot of different opportunities and you do present in front of customers.
Yeah.
So I was comfortable with that aspect, but the sales aspect, how you are measured, and how you can be successful is very different. I think what helped me get through that is really understanding that, yes, as a solution engineer, you're of course a team with sales, and collectively you're measured when you close deals because, you know, your company is successful when that happens. But
Yeah.
you as a solution engineer, it's actually, the problem isn't really how can I close this deal? I frame it as how can I design something, the setup of a project or a POC or whatever it might be to solve this customer or prospect's problem in the best way and give them the most value, because then closing the deal will come as part of that.
Yeah. And that's so core. Yeah, that's so core to the profession, right? Because it's you're not selling, you're solving, is what I heard you say. And solving is more empowering because it requires your ability to be able to fully understand what they're looking for, right? There was one of the interesting podcasts I just thought of where somebody had this analogy of, right, a buyer goes into Home Depot and they're asking about, you know, give me the best hammer that you have. And one person shows them all the hammers that they can buy. You know, here's a cheap one, here's the expensive one. But the other person says, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm trying to build a deck. And they said, you don't need a hammer, you need a drill because you need screws, not nails, right? So that's the problem solving versus selling would have been, let me sell you the best hammer I've got. So, but that was attractive to you as you started to get into it?
Yes. Yeah. That's what drew me into the field, and I've been enjoying it.
I guess one of the follow-up questions I usually ask is, obviously you've been doing it for some time now. What are, other than solving the problem, what are some other aspects of the role that keeps you going in it?
I think as solution engineers, we have a really unique role within the company in that we touch sales, but also delivery, solution architecture, the solution owner or product owner, and have the opportunity to bring all of that together with the client, including all of those stakeholders, the budget holders, the IT side, the business users, teaching them how to use the product. As a solution engineer, you're the only person in the company that touches all of those various pieces. And I just really enjoy that, the kind of big picture,
Yeah,
and put
it's
dots
the
together.
it's the influence you have across so many different functions, which is empowering. Like, you're not just single threaded and just doing one activity and one action. It's the holistic approach. Love that. Now, you didn't have an undergrad in computer science. You didn't have the traditional track record, and it sounds like obviously you were pulled into sales engineering, but was there a challenge in even looking at interviewing for the SE role, or did that come pretty natural to you because you were already a consultant?
So I think the biggest challenge, as you said, since my background isn't in computer science or anything that technical per se, is getting up to speed on all of the technology, how everything fits together. Before my interviews, I spent a lot of time making sure I was familiar with all of the different technologies, softwares, hardwares that our product would touch and interact with, and how it could all fit together. I knew that that was my weak spot, so I spent a lot of looking at it. And I'm lucky to have a really great technical team to draw some of the deep expertise from, and bring them in when I need to. But I think having built some understanding the last few years, giving me enough to know when, okay, I'm out of my depth, here's you bring someone in, that's really powerful and really it's helped me succeed, I would say. And I think the flip side of that is really being able to speak to your prospects and present potentially really complex information in a digestible way. Because often, as an SE doing demos, enabling clients or customers or prospects, you're really teaching them how you do things and how you can solve their problem, right? And so being able to teach them and deliver complex ideas in sort of bite-sized pieces, I think is the complementary hand of that really deep technical knowledge.
And now you've had international experience in sales engineering. So that's also very unique. Not many people work in different countries as sales engineers. You were in London, now you're in Singapore. Are there any aspects to how sales is different or sales engineering is different in those countries?
That's a tough question. I am quite new in Singapore, but I think a few things that I've noticed is there's a lot of um, really great and experienced talent in EMEA, in London, just because there's been a big history of these big sort of tier one companies looking for complex technology and implementation. Here in APAC and in Singapore, a lot of these companies are sort of starting that technology journey, and they're trying to do it all at once, especially with AI, Gen AI. So being able to break it down a little bit and make sure that you're achieving sort of the small step before you really go for the big leaps has been, a good learning.
So the sales process maturity is a bit different, and you're having to kind of the crawl, walk, run approach, help the customers understand, kind of almost educating them on how to pursue a tech sales process. You're kind of explaining the buyer journey while you're explaining what the solution they're evaluating.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a way.
When you're speaking to prospects, it's great to wow them with a new product and the fanciest technology. But at the end of the day, they want to solve their problems. They want to be confident that you're doing it, and they want to know how you've done it so they can tell everyone that you've done a great job. But if you wow them and just leave them with no understanding of how you can achieve that, you'll never speak to them again.
Yeah, that's right. And that's not solving. That's just, let me just get you excited about things. How has it been a woman solutions engineer In FinTech, do you see a lot of you in the area, or what's been that experience?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question because firstly, what you're doing here with this podcast, I think is great, raising awareness for what we do. And as a woman in fintech, firstly in technology, but also the financial aspect of that in a, let's call it somewhat niche role of a solution engineer.
Yes.
There
Changing
aren't
though.
many.
It's improving a lot over the last 10 years, but
Yeah,
it's still got ways to go.
in part, I'm sure thanks to all the work that you're doing. But yeah, there aren't many of us, I would say. There have been times when I've had imposter syndrome, feeling like I shouldn't be in the room with really senior C-level execs of banks, MDs. But I think it's really just coming back to knowing that, I'm here and I've moved because I can get to their problems and put together a really strong solution and show value to these prospects, even when you're the only woman in the room, oftentimes.
Yeah.
And then sometimes that's helpful because when you speak, people listen.
Yeah. And there's that, obviously so much of it is based on building trust. And you
Yeah.
may be walking in with, I don't know if this person's going to be technical enough, or, she doesn't look like everybody else in this room. But obviously, as you start presenting, because of your passion with solving, not selling, I'm sure that comes through. And maybe in the beginning it's rough, but people start to realize that this person is here to help us solve a problem, and we need to listen to what she has to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes people see me and expect me to work in a certain way or behave in a certain way, whether that's prospects or even internally. And it's about making sure that I build these relationships and create that trust with all the various stakeholders so that everyone can get the best out of their time.
Sounds like that's probably what keeps the job more challenging. And how much fun would it be if it wasn't challenging? So amazing what
Yeah.
you're doing. Now, Grace, you've also got to work with so many account executives. I don't know in fintech, the diversity with account executives, but in general, are there qualities that you have really adored or admired about how account executives interact with you, engage with you, optimize, your resources as a solutions engineer? Any top qualities come to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in a smaller company, good communication is number one on
Yeah.
my list of things that an account executive can do well and make the most out of everyone's time, whether it's me or the client. And that's being proactive. An example might even just be knowing their account forward and backwards. So when we get together to talk through how we want to approach a meeting, what we want to get out of this with a prospect. They know exactly what every person, if I've never met them before, is looking for, how they fit in within the organization so that we can go and ask the right questions around how we can make this prospect successful. I think lastly is having an account exec just keep pushing the ball forward. Sometimes it might be we're all covering so many different accounts. As an SE, especially, you're wearing so many different hats, speaking with so many different people across all of the team. But an account exec has that motivation for their deal. So for them to, communicate well, but really keep pushing that ball forward with the customer or prospect and internally with me as a team, I think that's really helpful. It also means that I don't have to be the bad guy as much, which I appreciate.
Right. I think your point about the better communication you have between the two, the more synergy you'll have and the better solutions you'll be able to come up with together. Any pet peeves, anything that, you're like, I wish account executives did this more or did this better? You're like, where do I start? Just give me a few.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me, since my job is to make sure a prospect gets the most out of whatever we're doing, maybe if a account exec overpromises specifically on the timeline, because with the timeline, everything's planned around deadlines and worked backwards. And if something is promised, you want to deliver that, but that can cause a lot of headaches if we aren't on the
Yes.
same page about when that needs to happen. So probably that piece. But I think it really
Sometimes
is
in
just,
the heat of the moment, right? Quota pressures and things like that. I totally empathize with that too, right? Having played the AE role, right? Your clock is so depending on, if your company's on a quarterly or annual targets. There's a natural and intentional push on urgency that us as SEs are often not as tied to. So you can totally empathize with that. I'll share in the book, I talk about 7 sins. I have a 7 sins of AEs and 7 sins of SEs. I'll send that over to you, see if any of those resonate with you.
yeah, I'm sure they would.
Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun, Grace. I know it took us a while to get this scheduled, but I love your journey. The purpose of the podcast and purpose of sharing your journey is that there is a different path that you can take, and it can be fulfilling, it can be challenging, it can be exciting. So I really appreciate you sharing your journey with us, and all the way from Singapore.
Thank you so much, Sachin. This was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care.